Why on earth would you take notes with Kakoune, a self-professed code editor, not text editor? I don't know, man. You clicked the video. What's that? There are only 3 other YouTube videos about Kakoune? Yeah, that's what I thought. So maybe stick around and we can explore Crazy Town together. I enjoy the simplicity of using modal editors to take plain text notes, even as someone who writes more prose than code. Yeah, I'm one of those Emacs org mode people. You caught me. But I thought Kakoune looked super interesting, so here we are. It's gonna be fun, and you'll quickly learn I'm not at all qualified to be your tour guide. If you want to know the best modal editor for taking notes, it's Evil Mode Emacs, 100%, no contest. But if you're gonna complain that it's slow or bloated, which it is, then obviously it's NeoVim. That's not what this video is about. This video is about the grass being greener on the other side. This video is about wondering if something out there is nearly intangibly better than Vim, even if all my software needs are already technically met. And it should be obvious, but I'm not an expert in any of this. My text editor needs are more modest than yours. I'm not a professional developer using it as a second home. I just need it to be fast, simple, good enough to write scripts in small programs, and able to take notes in a way that I like. But we're basically going to focus on that last point, because most editors are better at writing code than notes, and I'm better at writing notes than code. After my last video, Kakoune was calling to me with its siren song of slightly more logical key bindings and a minimalist core with shell integrations to outsource almost every feature to a dedicated program. This one comment, though, is what really pushed me to try it. I really regret ever trying Kakoune. It was totally not worth it, but I can't go back now. It's better than Vim, but in practice, it's not a significant difference. And the pain of switching back and forth is something I'm agonizing over all the time. This guy makes it sound like Kakoune ruined his life because it's slightly better than Vim, but it's incredibly inconvenient in a world dominated by Vim. Yet he still won't switch back. He says he regrets it. But tell me this isn't the best endorsement that you've ever seen. I read this and all I see is, so you're telling me it's better than Vim. Also, I like things that are technically correct, even if they're not practically correct. I guess you could call me that guy. A good example of this is the Incredible Hulk issue 181. Yeah, deal with my comic analogy for like 2 seconds. It's a $10,000 comic book. It's the first full Wolverine story and the first time Wolverine is on the cover. Except Hulk 180 is technically the first appearance of Wolverine, but he only appears on the last page, so everyone's like, nah, that doesn't count. I'm part of the smaller group who's like, well, actually, this should be the most collectible book because Hulk 180 is the first true appearance of Wolverine. And that's what draws me to Kakoune, the sense that it's doing the right thing, that it might have those 2% more efficient key bindings, even if it's not the popular thing that anyone's willing to learn. For a real crash course, if you somehow landed on this video without knowing what Kakoune is, first of all, seriously, how did you get here? What search terms did you even use? Second, it is a modal terminal text editor, much like Vim, but the command grammar is reversed. So you make a selection with a motion, then perform an action. So to copy a word, you'd press W to select it, then Y to yank it, compared to Vim's YW. So, you can see what you're doing before you do it. What a concept. Also, there's no visual mode to make selections, so while you're moving the selection around in normal mode, you are moving or extending the selection at the same time. Everyone seems to hate this in principle and dismisses it as being different for the sake of it, but it removes a whole mode. It is objectively simpler and provides more feedback than Vim. Like, there's obviously a reason this exists. It's called Maw's Experiment for a Better Code Editor, and clearly it was an experiment worth taking. Finally, it's built with the core functionality of working on multiple selections at the same time, similar to Sublime Text. There are Vim plugins that hack this on, but I'm not really familiar with their limitations. Seeing the selection you're operating on before you operate on it makes sense to me. The bindings like GJ to go down to the bottom of the document make more sense than Vim's Shift G. In Kakoune, it's G, go, J, down. In Vim, it's capital G, because that's what it always has been. I personally think of the word ground in capital letters because there's not an intuitive reason for it. G is kind of just a crazy key in Vim. Do you know that G question mark or G question mark will rot13 encipher a line? Meaning it shifts all the letters 13 positions with a Caesar cipher. This is harmless, but also like, what the hell? Why is this even built into Vim, let alone bound to the G key? DD in Vim deletes a line. But what does the second D mean? I press DW to delete a word. Sure, $$ to delete to the end of the line. Makes sense. DD deletes a line, because it does. In Kakoune, X is the key to select a whole line, and D is the delete key. There's a lot less just because type nonsense. Now, there is a downside to this. I know, I've been implying that every single thing is better thought out and makes more sense in Kakoune because of the way commands are structured essentially quote-unquote backwards. You can't repeat commands with the period like you can in Vim. Period in Kakoune repeats the last insertion, which like, alright, cool, it does something, but it's not as useful as period in Vim, which can quickly repeat the last normal mode action. But let's get to the more exciting functions. In Vim, to hard wrap your text into 80 character lines, you select it and then press GQ, and there's the mnemonically meaningless G key again. In Kakoune, the key binding is... Obviously, there's no key binding. What kind of shambling bloat do you take this absolute beacon of the Unix philosophy for? Kakoune doesn't have built-in formatting functions. You press bar and pipe it to format-W80, the Unix format command, which sends its output back into the Kakoune buffer. If you want to sort in Kakoune, you select something and then pipe it to the Unix command sort. Vim has a built-in sort command. And it's not that you can't do the same thing in Vim, just select it, you get this cool nonsense that represents your selection, then bang, sort, and that pipes it to the Unix command sort, just like Kakoune. But it's the fact that Kakoune is saying, screw you, yeah, I'm a text editor, yeah, you're gonna wanna sort things, am I gonna implement 12 lines of C++ code to do it? No, because you could just pipe it out to the sort command. Either you think that's an admirable adherence to the Unix philosophy, or this is a Spartan text editor overcomplicating its infrastructure by refusing to implement basic features. To me, though, it almost feels similar to when you first disabled arrow keys when you first started to use Vim. Kakoune forces you to learn how to use some Unix commands. If you completely ignore all the nonsense I say in this entire video about trying to take notes in completely unsuitable software. Listen up, I know you guys have this on in the background. I think Kakoune has to be one of the best ways to learn about the Unix shell. Stop whining that the key bindings are backwards. Force yourself to use it for a weekend. Just get your workflow up and going. You're gonna have to solve some little problems. You're gonna have to do something in the shell that you're used to Vim doing for you, and you're probably gonna learn something. Is it easier to type XD than DD to delete a line? No. Is it hard to remember a few Vim idiosyncrasies like capital G or Control R? No. I'm positive every single person watching this video already knows them, except for maybe G question mark. And it would be trivial to remap Vim's key bindings to something that actually makes sense. But the simpler, more correct-feeling design philosophy is why I like Kakoune, even if there's zero chance of it improving my productivity. It's the same reason I like the Incredible Hulk 180, even if there's zero chance it's gonna make me a rich influencer. There are a couple great articles on why Kakoune sucks. It requires too many modifier keys, and visual feedback, of course, isn't good UI design. It's just for noobs. Real programmers do it blindfolded. And there's a couple great articles on why everything makes sense, and Vim key bindings are for boomers. It truly is the Vim vs. Emacs of our time, except this time there's only 5 people on either side of the argument. And if you think I have anything meaningful to add here, I'm not about to have some nuanced discussion about Unix sockets and FIFO pipes. I'm just some idiot who bangs on a keyboard to make letters appear on my screen. So Kakoune is weird and neat. I get it. How am I going to use it to take notes? Because like I said, it's very focused on its few core features out of the box. Well, the plugin system lets you create new commands, listen for events with hooks to run those commands, and manipulate displayed text with highlighters, and not too much else. Rather than implement an embedded scripting language like Lua, any programming logic has to be outsourced to a shell script. Again, this is either kind of cool and an admirable restraint, or what are you serious? I don't want to have to write a shell script for every little thing I want to do. People sure are split on this, but I gotta say, because people tend to use shell scripting to do the bare minimum, either for simple logic or to glue on external tools, I've had pretty good luck with random old unmaintained Kakoune plugins. In my admittedly short experience with Kakoune, it feels like an editor for people who kludge together their own tools. To be clear, there are great pre-made plugins available. There's an LSP client, auto pairing, a fuzzy finder. But just to give an example from my use case, I like concealing markup in headings in my notes. I like org mode, so I use 1 star for heading level 1, 2 stars for heading level 2, 3 stars for heading level 3, but it's nice if my editor hides all but the last star to make it look a little bit cleaner. Potentially someone has done this, but very likely that would be something I have to make myself. So I started messing with writing some simple plugins, learning how Kakoune worked, and I stumbled into a text editing war I didn't even know existed because I've never personally had to think about it. Soft wrapping versus hard wrapping text. Now, this is probably a good time to remind you, Kakoune markets itself as a code editor, not a text editor, so I'm objectively using it wrong, and I appreciate that handling long lines of prose is simply not something it was made to do, so none of my complaints are a reflection of how good or well-designed the project is. Since I started using a text editor for notes, I have always used soft wrapping, meaning I'm typing paragraphs on one huge single line, and when it hits the edge of the editor window, it wraps back around and makes it look like multiple lines. And I just realized that as I'm diving down into simpler and simpler editors, the behavior gets worse and worse. In Emacs, of course things just work how you'd expect. It does everything. It's Emacs. You are perfect, you powerful but obsolete looking pile of junk. In Doom Emacs or Vim, moving up and down does move you to the next real line, but the motions GJ and GK moves by visual lines. Basically, in Emacs or Vim, wrapped lines either work how you would expect, or you need to remap like 4 keys and it works, even in insert mode. Now, when you go down into crazy town, Kakoune, Viz, NeatVI, sometimes soft wrapping text isn't even a feature, but when it is, it usually isn't super intuitive. And you know what? I get it. The Venn diagram between people who use these stupid-ass programs and people who think that code should limit itself to 80-character lines is probably really close to a circle. So here's me. I like the idea of Kakoune, I like the weird key bindings, I like the lack of a visual mode, but all of a sudden this fundamental feature that I'm used to, navigating a block of text visually, doesn't exist. So I check what other people do, and for the most part, they hard wrap their lines with line breaks at 80 characters. And some of them even manually break up sentences into multiple lines semantically. That way, every visual line is also a real line, so navigating up and down is fine. And that is how I learned I am all the way on the other side of this battle. Soft wrapping lines of text rules. Breaking up prose like this makes sense if you're done with it, if you're publishing a README document or whatever, but for something that you go back to and constantly change and edit, it's worse. It is just worse. Actually formatting the text is simple. You select everything, which is the %sign, and you pipe it into format, and you're done. Looks great. But now each line is completely meaningless. If I wanted to move a paragraph or idea around, I'd have to make a more complex selection. Is it the end of the world? No, but it's certainly not more convenient than the alternative. If I'm adding to the middle of a paragraph, something I of course frequently do, it looks like this while I'm editing. Just pure chaos. Then once I'm done editing, I have to pipe everything back into format again. End of the world? No, but not a step I want to have to take. Resizing the window? Yeah, you already know. If I make it less than 80 characters, it's gonna look like garbage. The only solution is to select everything and pipe it back into format. Again, is this the end of the world? No, but none of these are things I want to have to deal with. This is just why I like having soft-wrapped text that works. People on the hard-wrap side of this argument are just wrong. I'm sorry, you guys probably aren't wrong. It's just a little bit of a hassle and I don't want to have to deal with it. And so what do you do when your text editor doesn't do the thing you want it to do? You make a plugin. And it turns out a bunch of other people have wanted this feature too, and it turns out it's kind of harder than you'd think to consistently move a cursor up and down. I don't need to go into too much technical detail for the reasons this is a slightly harder technical problem than you might think, but a main problem is you can't get the width Kakoune is actually wrapping the text on. So if you have vertical visual elements on the screen like line numbers, Kakoune might actually be wrapping text every 76 or 75 characters, but your script can only get the real window width of 80 characters. There's some other considerations like characters with a width greater than 1 like tabs, or the fact that Kakoune supports multiple cursors. But the point is, this isn't as simple as it seems, and potentially, this feature couldn't ever be as seamless as beautiful, beautiful Emacs. So I hacked together a bad shell script for visual line movement, and it doesn't work, and I don't know why. The shell script kind of works on its own, but I'm messing something up. Don't try to read the screen and code review me. I was chopping it up. It's a mess. I'm not even going to admit how long I spent approaching this problem in different ways. Before going into Kakoune, I knew it was going to be work. I fully expected to have to make or hack onto a simple wiki plugin and simple things like concealers for heading markup. I knew there were snazzy features that I was just never going to have. I'm never going to figure out how to fold headings, or I'm never going to have a snazzy file preview like Telescope has. In Vim, in insert mode, you can turn your cursor into a vertical bar, but in Kakoune, everything is a selection, so there's no such thing as a selection of 0 length, so you always have a block cursor. Still, no problem, totally expected that. Then, of course, 2 minutes in, I'm hit with just another half dozen things that I realized, let alone the basic ability to navigate text up and down, which I am in the process of failing to implement successfully. And by the way, while I was screwing around with my cursor, NeoVim implemented an obscure feature called Smooth Scroll, which lets you scroll through partially wrapped lines of text. And basically what that means is now you can scroll Vim documents one line at a time, even if you have super long lines of text that are wrapped around, so it's less jumpy when you're scrolling through it. So I'm over here in Kakoune, I can't even use a cursor, and Vim is like, hey guys, update, it's even better over here now! And I realize, oh my god, I flew too close to the sun. I am not elite enough for this editor, and I told people in my last video I was gonna check it out. I'm a normie. I saw the reviews. I saw that YouTube video, Kakoune, a great editor, just not for me. I thought you were weak. I thought you couldn't handle the flipped Vim grammar and a few fruity, bloated missing features. Think of the philosophy. Think of the orthogonality. I don't even know what orthogonality means. Think of the 2% efficiency gains. Who are these gods that can use this editor and extract all this value? Let's go back to the official plugins page. This guy has made a bunch of plugins. Who is he? How is he able to make such good use of Kakoune? Oh, he's an Emacs user, of course! Emacs is the only way one man can have so much power. So, Emacs does so much that after tweaking a couple things like installing evil mode, it's half a matter of just learning how to utilize everything that the program already does. And people have written so many damn Vim plugins over the years that if you have a need, it's already been addressed 3 or 4 different ways. So with Vim, you could just piece together your ideal text editor like Lego bricks. And Kakoune is for hackers. Kakoune is for people who are going to make their own shit. To be clear, it is a perfectly good text editor with plenty of plugins to start out with, but personally, I didn't realize that I was going to have to spend more than a weekend hacking on janky features to make it work exactly how I want. That's compared to the Vim alternative of spending an evening browsing GitHub. Or again, this is possibly just my fault for trying to bend the will of a code editor into my wiki and org mode desires. Kakoune is obviously cool. I love the editing model. I wish I was cool enough to use it. But for me, NeoVim has too many note-taking niceties for me to even pretend there's a reason to switch, other than being a text editor hipster. But if you do want to check it out, take a look at this article. The first 2 hours of Kakoune in 2 minutes, just put this config as your base config. It's mostly stuff that you're going to add anyway. Also, check out this forum post, I'll put it in the description. It has config that lets you change the cursor color depending if you're in insert or normal mode, super useful. And if you do want to check out a wiki plugin, I guess this ostensibly is a video about taking notes, even though I kind of failed. I don't think anyone still watching is seriously considering using Kakoune for notes, but the best wiki plugin is on GitLab, so you won't find it on the Kakoune website. It's kakoune-gh wiki. Check it out. Is this video long enough? No? You're still doing dishes and you need to hear an underqualified guy talk about text editors more? Alright. So, there's this program, Helix. And I mean, come on, you've definitely heard about that if you're still here. It's a mashup of Kakoune and NeoVim, maybe kinda sort of. Helix has insert, normal, and visual modes, like Vim, but it also has the motion before action syntax of Kakoune. Adding visual mode back, which Helix calls selection mode, feels like it removes some of Kakoune's hyper-efficiency and simplicity. In Kakoune, if you're in normal mode, you're modifying which text is selected, period. You're navigating through your text, sure, but you're navigating to the next selection that you're going to operate on, which is still ultimately just manipulating what text is selected. You may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like. And I didn't really touch on this, but Kakoune is able to completely forgo having a visual mode because you frequently extend your selections with modifier keys like Shift and Alt. So like W will move you to the next word, and then Shift W will extend your selection to the next word. In Helix, when you're bopping around in normal mode, you are both navigating and changing the selection. When I press W to move through words, each word is getting highlighted as I do it. But if I wanted to highlight more than one word, I go into the visual mode with V and then highlight the next two words with WW. And to me, a dummy who doesn't use Helix at all, it's like, wait, what? What exactly is normal mode in Helix? In Vim normal mode, you're just navigating the cursor to where it needs to be. Everyone understands Vim. It does one thing. In Kakoune normal mode, you're modifying what text is selected. So yes, it is technically navigating and selecting, but ultimately, it still only does one thing. It changes what text is selected. And then Helix normal mode is like selection mode light. If you can select everything you want in normal mode, cool. Otherwise, go to selection mode and extend your selection to whatever it needs to be. It's similar to Vim having 3 separate modes, but I feel like there's a subtle difference. That overlap between normal and selection mode, there's something weird about it. And I like that Kakoune was just able to completely get rid of that overlap by getting rid of the visual mode. And the way this is set up, it often means that Helix commands are the longest of the 3 editors. In Vim, to delete to the end of the line, it's capital D, okay, but that's the cheaty shortcut way to do it. The mnemonic way is $, 2 characters. In Kakoune, it's Alt-L to select to the end of the line, and then D to delete it, 2 characters plus a modifier key. And in Helix, it's V to enter visual mode, GL to select to the end of the line, D to delete. 4 characters. Helix prefers what it considers consistent command syntax and tries to avoid modifier keys, which Kakoune makes heavy use of. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, because if it makes complex motions easier to formulate in your head, then it's actually a good thing. Vim Golf, a competition to see who can perform tasks in Vim with the lowest keystrokes possible, is a little bit bullshit, because 100% of the time, I'm going to be doing things the dumb, easy way, not the most insane, big brain, minimal way. Kakoune feels like it was designed by a mad scientist who took the concept of modal editing to a certain extreme. Helix, on the other hand, has longer commands than Kak or Vim. It doesn't really feel that different from Vim since it has the same modes, and it doesn't have some uniquely minimalist philosophy because it's trying to be an editor for everyone. And that's certainly not to say that Helix is bad or it has no purpose over Vim, but I really get the purpose of Kakoune. Kakoune is for radical software extremists. Kakoune is for people who want to use the Unix shell as their development environment, and they're willing to upend their whole way of doing things for potential 2% productivity gains. Kakoune is for people who say, Arch Linux? No thanks. I'm a grown adult. I'm going to use Gentoo. Thank you. People say Kakoune is similar to Helix, but I feel like there is a big group of Kakoune users who would look at Helix and say like, I get what you're saying, dude, but this program literally has the opposite philosophy of what we're going for. So despite being compared to and taking inspiration from Kakoune, Helix is really targeting the same market as NeoVim. And if I had to say who it's for, it looks like it's for regular people who declare Vim or Emacs bankruptcy and want to stop tweaking their config forever because built-in features like LSP tree sitter, a fuzzy finder, witch key, or completion are just built in and they just work. Helix config is a TOML file rather than Lua or eLisp, so you're not going to be programming your configuration, and it's not infinitely extensible. One thing Helix people like to do is show off how short their config files are, while they still have a perfectly modern and usable editor. So yeah, from the batteries included, sensible defaults, I don't want to get stuck configuring my editor forever since, I think there's a purpose for Helix. If Kakoune is 3 steps away from NeoVim, Helix is 1 step away, which I think it would make it easier to switch, but it also might give you less motivation to bother. I think at some point when newbies use Helix, like me, they might say, wait, I could do most of this selection first style of editing by just pressing V in Vim before I do motions. I think Helix needs a better marketing pitch. Helix seems like a really nice polished editor, but Come to Helix, you can relearn all your muscle memory. The command syntax is longer, but hey, at least you don't have to configure a language server. Probably isn't super compelling to most people. No, you don't understand. We've also got true support for multiple cursors. Yeah. Anyway, without plugin support, I haven't actually used Helix much, so don't listen to anything I have to say. It's possible there is some secret sauce that will click once I actually use it. I need my wiki links and markup concealers and all that, because I want to take notes, so I'll return to Helix once they implement plugins. I like text editors, man. They're fun. Some people just hate Helix, and they think that Vim should be the only modal editing paradigm that ever exists, and I just don't get it. Potentially, there is a better editor user interface than one someone invented while episodes of McCloud were still airing. And I love that people are investing time to try to find it. Yeah, this video has a McCloud reference. Look it up, Zoomers. Just because you already use one editing model doesn't mean that there can't possibly be multiple good ones. Just like Emacs and Vim are both good programs. Except Emacs default key bindings are trash, and there's no reason for Vim to even exist if Emacs would just be a little fucking faster and more responsive. I guess this wouldn't be a Kakoune Helix video if I didn't try to refute Strawmen Vimmer arguments, so hit me up with them. I don't want to relearn my muscle memory. Alright, this is an easy one, because if you actually thought that, you wouldn't be using Vim. When you see someone who's unwilling to try Vim, you probably think, "Oh, you idiot, you don't understand, it's better." I understand that Kakoune overall, due to its design, probably won't be more efficient than Vim for you. But your argument against the key binding specifically can't be that it's not worth learning because you've already used Vim for 20 years. If it's even slightly better, shouldn't it be the new modal editing default? I realize there's no reality where anything ever replaces Vim, but like in a theoretical sense. I'm an idealist. Vim key bindings are used everywhere. Are they? I think that's an overstatement. I use programs like Visidata or NNN where people talk about Vim-inspired key bindings, and most of it is stuff that Kakoune never changed to begin with. HJKL navigation, Control-U, Control-D, U undo, Y yank, P paste, insert mode, whatever. And yeah, there will be some slight differences, but you either have to context switch or manually reconfigure hotkeys in whatever program you use. Bash has Emacs-style key bindings, but no one on the planet uses Emacs because they already use Bash. They either context switch or they change Bash's key bindings. That is such a good example, by the way, and no one ever brings it up. The next time someone says Vim key bindings are used everywhere, point out that they use Bash and that Bash has Emacs bindings. Oh, it's such a good gotcha. Also, you can't go too hard on it because Bash totally has a Vim mode, and they probably use that. But they had to reconfigure it. Vim is installed everywhere. All right, I think a mix of VI, Vim Tiny, and Vim are installed everywhere, but I won't be too pedantic on this. This is true, and it's something I can't refute. Managing Linux servers at work is the only reason I know VI to begin with. I will say I have never done anything significant on a server that just happened to have VI installed. If I'm relying on plain old VI, no syntax highlighting, no fuzzy finder, no completion, no file explorer, no clipboard integration, no theme, no splits, I'm not doing anything significant. I'm editing a few lines of a config file or something. Which, yeah, it's something you need to do, but it's also a minor task that doesn't need to dictate my primary text editor choice. Sometimes, unfortunately, I find myself in Nano, and you know what? I deal with its stupid key bindings for 5 minutes. But if you genuinely live in vanilla VI for significant work, it probably doesn't make sense to context switch with Kakoune. So that's it. I'm too lazy to use Kakoune. I will admit it. Helix isn't ready for me yet. Emacs is one of the greatest programs ever made. It's just too slow. And NeoVim is already my choice, but it's out here adding core features that improve my use case even further. So I think I'm just a Vimmer for the foreseeable future. Don't tell me to look at more stupid crap like Acme, which, what is that? It's like Kakoune for people who use a mouse. This isn't a text editor channel, man. I have no idea what it is. I have no idea where all you people came from, but you know what? I sure bet fewer people are gonna watch a video about freaking Kakoune than my notes video. But it's something I said I wanted to check out, and now I did, and hey, guess what? Now there are 4 YouTube videos about Kakoune.